Priest, and I'm an energy policy analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy. I'm going to help facilitate and moderate today's webinar. This webinar aims to provide details about the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program, the administrative rules that were recently finalized in the program, as well as share upcoming program milestones. The webinar will be recorded and the slides and recording will be posted on Odo's website. Before we jump into the slides, I want to start with introducing some of the other staff on the webinar who have been working on launching the program. While I'm doing that, if you haven't already, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat, share your name, as well as which organization, group, or entity you're affiliated with. This will help us get a sense of who's attended today and which communities and entities we still need to reach. So I'm going to start with James, who spearheaded the administrative rule development and is the main presenter today, to introduce himself.
Thanks, Patrick. Yes, my name's James Kogel. I'm a policy analyst here at the Oregon Department of Energy.
Thanks. How about Pandyan? I think you might be muted if you are talking.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Pandian Krishnaswamy. I'm Energy Incentives Programs Manager at Oregon Department of Energy.
Great. Ruchi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruchi Sudhir. I'm Associate Director for Strategic Engagement and here helping out the EDS team. And Patrick and James, thanks everyone for being here.
Great. How about Patricia?
I'm Patricia. I'm here to help you access the website, the webinar. So if you have any questions, just pop it in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Sarah, you are here? Sure.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bajevitz. I am one of the incentives analysts for both Odo heat pump programs.
And then finally, Kayla, will you jump in and introduce yourself too?
I am Kayla Barboza, and I'm the other incentive analyst. So Sarah and I will probably be the ones that you talk to when you have questions for us.
Thanks so much. All right. I think we can move on to the next slide then. So in case you aren't familiar with Odo, I wanted to give some brief information about the agency, as well as the mission, which is to help Oregonians make informed decisions and maintain a resilient and affordable energy system. Odo advances solutions to shape an equitable, clean energy transition, protect the environment and public health, and responsibly balance energy needs and impacts for current and future generations. We advance this mission through many initiatives that support energy saving and efficiency, decarbonization efforts, and community resiliency. The Community Heat Pump Deployment Program that we're talking about today is among the newest of those initiatives. This slide gives some information about using WebEx, using this platform today. You might be new to it or you might have used it before. So you can use the hand raise function to ask a question, as well as the chat function to type questions throughout the webinar. We want this to be useful for everybody, so we encourage questions. We won't be providing answers in the chat, but we'll instead answer the questions verbally. Where appropriate and timely to the topic being discussed, I'll post questions to James and other staff during the presentation. Other questions will be saved for discussion in the Q&A portion at the end. And any program-specific questions that are not addressed during this hour will be included in the Q&A document to be published following the webinar. So as I said, you can use the raise hand function, and then if appropriate, timed, Patricia will unmute you. For those of you on the phone today, you can use *3 to raise your hand, and then we'll be able to unmute you from there as well. Great. Does anyone have any questions about using WebEx before we begin? All right, seeing none, I'm going to pass the presentation over to James, and he's going to dive into the program details.
Right, thank you, Patrick. So following the heat dome event in 2021, Oregon passed Senate Bill 1536 in 2022. This bill had a number of components, one of which was the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program, which we'll be talking about today. Since then, the Oregon Department of Energy conducted some initial outreach with stakeholders prior to drafting rule language. Draft rules were then published back in November, and public comment collected on them, with a public hearing having been held early in January. We appreciate all the comments we received during this time and considered them when finalizing the program rules. The final program rules were published in February and are available from the Oregon Secretary of State's website. Following this, an opportunity announcement for the program was published on February the 24th, and that is available from the Oregon Department of Energy's website. The object of today's webinar is to provide an update on the final rules, highlighting what changed, as well as to share information in the opportunity announcement and highlight key upcoming milestones. As mentioned, we really want to encourage questions today, so please raise your hand or drop a question in the chat throughout the presentation, and we can pause at a convenient stopping place to discuss. The Oregon Department of Energy will contract with one eligible entity for each of the 11 regions pictured on the slide in Oregon, and one eligible entity for each of the federally recognized tribes in Oregon. Only certain entities will be able to apply for a grant from the program. A list of the entities is detailed on the slide. In addition, the entity must demonstrate it serves or represents at least one environmental justice community within a region or members of a federally recognized tribe in Oregon, and has the capacity to administer grant funds for the program. This information about eligibility is detailed in section 1.4 of the opportunity announcement, and information required in the application for this is highlighted in section 2.1 of the opportunity announcement. I just referred to environmental justice communities, and just to kind of provide some background, these include communities of color, communities experiencing lower incomes, tribal communities, rural communities, coastal communities, communities with limited infrastructure, and other communities traditionally underrepresented in public processes and adversely harmed by environmental and health hazards. These include seniors, youth, and persons with disabilities. We will be posting a list of online tools that could potentially help an applicant describe the community they serve or represent. An applicant may partner with another eligible entity to deliver the program. A partner may assist the applicant by providing or assisting in the provision of a financial assistance. This assistance can come in many different forms. One example would be providing financial assistance to residents in an area of a region not covered by the service area of an applicant. The bill requires this form of partnership of utilities if there are areas of a region not covered by the utility service area. Beyond reaching more households, partners could provide other knowledge or skill sets to enhance a potential program. An entity may only apply for a grant for the region that contains the greatest percentage of individuals that the eligible entity serves or represents. If an entity serves a community that spreads across 2 or more counties, which are located in 2 or more different regions, then the entity must apply for a grant for the region that contains the highest number of individuals that the entity serves. Alternative boundaries may be proposed, but there are requirements involved. These include that any alternative boundary does not result in an increase in the number of regions or overlapping of regional boundaries, that there are viable coverage options for areas of other regions impacted, and that 51% of or more of the applicant's service area is within the proposed alternative boundaries, and that any electric utility serving that area has been consulted with. So the grant amounts will be allocated according to the criteria detailed in the program rules. Using this formula, the estimated grant funding allocation are detailed in the table on the slide. Grantees will be able to use up to 15% of the awarded grant amount for administrative expenses and marketing costs. The program rules outline what is considered eligible as an administrative expense or marketing cost, but simply this would be direct costs to establish, implement, and monitor the program that would be eligible. Just pause there to see if there's any questions.
I'm not seeing anything yet, James.
Okay, great. I'll continue then. So the program is to provide grants to eligible entities who then provide financial assistance for the purchase and installation of heat pumps and related upgrades to individuals who reside within the region or who are members of the tribe the entity has been awarded for. The program rules provide the basic outline of the program, but allow the eligible entities applying for the program to propose in their application customized offerings for the region they are applying for. One of the initial questions prospective applicants will need to consider is what type of financial assistance they will offer, such as grants, rebates, or other incentives. The entities will also be able to specify which upgrades they will support with financial assistance. A requirement from the bill, which is reflected in the rules, is for the eligible entities to prioritize the financial assistance to the groups on the slide. The rules outline the method for determining whether an individual would qualify as being considered within an environmental justice community, but the rules also leave room for an entity to propose an alternative method. Attestations by the individual benefiting from the financial assistance will be used to identify whether the individual qualifies to be prioritized. An applicant will need to specify how they will prioritize these groups in their application. Some examples are provided in the rules and include, but are not limited to, waiting lists or expedited processing times or targeted outreach or marketing. A description of how individuals and communities that meet more than one category will be prioritized will also need to be included in the application. For more,
James,
yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
No, sorry.
I'm going to jump in with a question from the chat, which is if there is a required percentage that must go to a prioritized group.
No, there is no budget allocation reservation in the bill for this program. It's just that those groups be prioritized in the provision of funding.
Great, thanks.
Great. So for more information, please see section 2.1 of the opportunity announcement, which details the minimum information that will be required to describe the program. So heat pumps eligible for the program will have efficiency requirements as laid out in the program rules. There is a baseline efficiency, which is set at the level of the federal standards, as well as a higher efficiency incentive, which can be offered but is not required to be offered. This could make the customer eligible for a higher level of financial assistance. We adjusted the higher efficiency requirements for some heating seasonal performance factors and seasonal energy efficiency ratios for split and single package systems, as well as allowing the use of equivalent HSBF and SEER ratings in addition to the HSBF2 and SEER2 ratings. An entity may propose higher efficiency requirements in their applications if they wish. The maximum amounts able to be awarded per dwelling are also established in rule. In the final rules, we simplified the maximum amount that can be provided, specifying that it is $5,000 for the minimum efficiency requirements and up to $7,000 for higher efficiency requirements. However, the rules do allow the eligible entity to propose lower amounts in their grant application should they wish. This will allow an eligible entity to customize the financial offerings to better meet the needs of their region as they see them. There are other requirements beyond efficiency that a project needs to meet to be eligible, and those are established in the program rules. But the rules also allow each entity applying for a grant to propose additional requirements. Any proposed additions would need to be listed in the grant application. I wanted to note that following comments, we added manufacturer and labor warranty requirements to the list of project requirements in the final rules. Individuals who benefit from the financial assistance must be the owner-occupant of a residential dwelling in Oregon where the heat pump will be installed.
Looks like there's an additional question in the chat asking about how efficiency requirements for this program compare to those from ETO, from Energy Trust.
Sure. So the bill required us to set the minimum required efficiency standards at or above the federal efficiency requirements, which were updated at the start of this year. So we set our baseline at that minimum requirements, and then some of the adjustments that we made to the higher efficiency requirements were to better align them with the federal requirements relating to tax credits, as well as to align with other programs in the state. So with the aim that there would be the ability to kind of overlap or stack, I should say, incentives where eligibility for both programs was met.
Thanks, James. I'm having a couple other questions come in. I don't know that you had already addressed the time frame for the spending of the funds in the previous slide, but that is being raised again. So what would be the length of the grant? What would be the time frame in which the performance agreement would be?
Sure. I hadn't touched on it, that I was going to touch on it slightly later.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I can summarize it now. When we kind of, in part of the application will be to submit a kind of financial plan and budget for the program. And in that, we're asking that you project that the program, the budget and end date as being December 30th, 2025 in the application. And that kind of will be firmed up in the performance agreement stage of the process. But that is the projected end date right now.
So William then asks, will the program be retroactive to the beginning of the year? For example, will a person who had a heat pump installed in January be eligible for the rebates or credits?
Good question. So the bill for this program did not specify whether the incentives, rebates, grants, or whatever is offered would be retroactive or not. And we did not set a requirement on that in the rules. We are leaving it up to the regions to, if they wish to allow that in kind of how they set up the program. But we did not specify whether that would be a requirement or not. because we didn't want to impose any sort of a requirement like that onto the regions. So that would be up to the administrator of the regional, or who are to kind of establish.
Okay, I've still got another kind of timing question. While the program will extend to 2025, are the funds listed a total amount for that time, or is that the amount that's given on an annual basis?
So the grant allocation is the total amount available for the funds. So it's not like an annual. There will be a schedule of disbursement that is kind of aligns with just kind of getting the program up and running and meeting milestones, and just kind of signing a performance agreement, getting opening the program for applications, and then we have a allocation that we're able to disperse this biennium, and then there'll be additional funds that will be available in the next biennium, and so the funding will come in but it's kind of expected to come in, be available to the grantee this year, assuming they open the program and begin accepting applications.
Thanks, James. I think that's it for now. There's a question that I think we can hold till after you're done with the slides.
Okay, thanks. So if selected for a grant, an entity will be offered a performance agreement. The performance agreement will provide details of the requirements of the grantee and the terms and conditions of the grant. Requirements around record keeping, reporting, and compliance monitoring are detailed in the rules. This includes retention of records by the grantee, submission of an annual and more frequent reports to Odo, and cooperation in any inspections or other monitoring actions taken by Odo. The grantee will also be required to conduct and keep records of their own inspections of heat pump installations. In addition, each entity awarded a grant will provide a representative that sits on an advisory council. The council will study and identify best practices for administering grant funds and providing financial assistance, barriers to administering grant funds and providing financial assistance, and opportunities for providing technical assistance. Members of the council are entitled to compensation and expenses as provided for in statutes that relate to the compensation and expenses of members of state boards and commissions. The opportunity announcement published last week details the schedule for awarding grants. The online application portal is expected to open on Monday next week. You will be able to access it from Odo's customer service portal or from the program webpage. You will need to sign in to Odo's customer service portal to be able to begin an application. We will also be publishing application resources on the program webpage as well. When filling out the application, please refer to the minimum required information section. That's 2.1, and the scoring criteria that's listed in the opportunity announcement, which I will review shortly. You will see there's a deadline for questions on the schedule. Please submit those questions you have regarding the application to the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program mailbox. I will have that on the last slide. We will respond to your questions and then also post the answers online in an FAQ document for other applicants to be able to view. Applications are due April 7th, after which Odo will review the applications for completeness and eligibility, and may be in touch to request additional information from an applicant if necessary to support the competitive review. Applicant applications found to be eligible and complete will move into that competitive review, which will be scored using the scoring criteria in section 3.2 of the opportunity announcement. Just check if we have any additional questions at this point.
Not yet.
Okay, great. So as mentioned, applications will be competitively scored using the scoring criteria. There are 6 criteria, which are connections to communities, experience with community program development, organizational capacity and capability, strength of the proposed program, strength of financial plan, and proposed outcomes. There is a more detailed breakdown of these criteria in section 3.2 of the opportunity announcement. So please review those criteria when putting together your application. I just kind of summarized them here, and there's kind of a total of 95 points available, and the scoring breaks down. It's listed there on the slide in the opportunity announcement. So information that will be required on the application can be found in section 2.1 of the opportunity announcement, and includes information about the applicant organization, any partners, the region they are applying for, a description of the entity's capacity to administer the grants, a description of how the entity serves or represents an environmental justice community or members of a tribe, a description of the proposed program, including methods to prioritize financial assistance, and a description of the financial offerings being proposed. Additionally, any proposed variation that is permitted in the rules will need to be outlined. And as specified earlier, a detailed budget will also be required to be submitted. This should have a projected end date of December 30th, 2025. Details regarding the anticipated administrative and marketing expenses also will be required. This information will allow Odo to assess the eligibility of the applicant and then score the application using the scoring criteria. Information provided in the application will also be used in the construction of the performance agreement between successful applicants and Odo. So thank you for joining today, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Also on the slide there is a link to the program webpage and the program email.
Thanks so much, James. Again, if you hadn't had the opportunity to put your name and affiliation in the chat, that would be really great for you to add that. Let us know who you are. And I'm going to go to a question that I was saving. So this is on the topic of partnerships and coverage of benefits for the identified regions from Greg. And they ask about concerns with agencies having limited reach within a district or within a regional boundary. So where a county is only one of a few within a region, the utility might be reluctant to apply because they don't cover the whole territory. So I think this raises the really important topic about partnerships and collaboration to provide for the regions. What else can you offer, James, on that topic?
Yeah, I think that's just a great point. I would encourage partnerships to kind of cover that additional area in a region that isn't covered by the service area of the applicant organization. Again, in the bill, it specifically called out utilities who would need to partner within a region if there's areas that weren't covered by their service area, or there is the option of that alternative boundary. But because we're trying to maximize the benefits to spread across the state, we have those kind of requirements around adjusting of those boundaries, because we don't want to have those little pockets of holes of lack of coverage. So I think, yeah, that kind of encourage people to reach out to discuss potential partnerships in their area.
Thanks. Here we've got a couple of new ones that have come in. Will Odo announce all of the entities that applied per region?
That is something we can follow up with after the webinar, once I can get that confirmed. And we can make sure that's in the FAQ document that we'll put out afterwards.
Great, thank you. So related, the next question is, will the public be able to know which entities plan to apply for program dollars so that members of the public can provide input prior to application submission? Okay, so.
Sorry, Patrick, could you repeat that one for me?
Yep. So this is about public input rather than partnerships. Will the public be able to know which entities plan to apply for program dollars so that they can provide input prior to application submission?
So I guess that's up to the applicant if they wish to solicit some support from their communities or community groups in their region. There will be an opportunity to kind of upload supporting documents. So I think that would be something that applicants could kind of solicit within their communities.
Okay. Let's see. A question on alternative boundaries from Thomas. If there's a lack of appetite from your identified regions for partners, can a utility request a modified area in the region?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I believe they should be able to. I'm just kind of double checking. I don't think there's any kind of requirement that they utilities couldn't propose an alternative boundary. I believe they should be able to, but I will dive back into the rules just to kind of double check that, and we can confirm that as well afterwards. But I don't think there's a barrier, but I will want to kind of just double check that.
Thanks, James. And a reminder to everybody that with the Q&A document, we'll make sure to fill in any gaps that we weren't able to answer live today, including offering contacts to other organizations that might have better information, such as Energy Trust. So Thomas had a follow-up question. I think the question is, it's about coordination with other partners in the region, but would Odo be willing to facilitate that coordination with other partners?
So it is kind of a competitive application process, and so we'll need to comply with our procurement processes, but we have heard from some potential applicants about the concept of trying to help people find partners within a region. And so we're considering what assistance we can provide. But if anybody has any thoughts or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the chat or drop them in an email to the mailbox, and we can certainly explore them as well.
Thanks, James. And Catherine added interest in that question as well. Thank you, Catherine. As well as Greg. So let's see. I've got a question on applicant eligibility. Garrett asked, when will homeowners be able to apply for rebates? In other words, when is it expected that I can tell customers to apply?
Yeah, so there'll be an award notification, but there is like the performance agreement process after that award notification, where we'll be kind of compiling the performance agreement, and both parties will want to review before signing. And then at that point, it's kind of up to the grantee of when they want to kind of start advertising to their communities that they will be accepting applications or expressing interest. So that'll be up to the individual grantees of whether they want to start that early and start gathering interest, or whether they want to wait until their program's fully up and running. I think it's going to be a region by region, grantee by grantee decision.
Right. So perhaps a small amount of clarification is that the grants being awarded by Odo go to the regional entity, that then that regional administrator determines the process for distributing these incentive funds out to the public and to homeowners.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for these great questions. Laura asks, are there any requirements for data collection? And you're welcome to add additional detail to that question, Laura. So I'm asking about maybe reporting requirements.
Okay, so yeah, there is reporting requirements in the bill about reports that will need to be submitted to the Oregon Department of Energy on an annual basis, which are going to be more detailed than the more regular update reports. So there'll be an annual report. There'll be like a bigger one that has detailed description of the entity's use of the funds, a list of like each loan or grant or financial assistance that provided, and then kind of nature of any administrative expenses and marketing costs, as well as any other information. And we have outlining the rules as well, and then those kind of more regular update reports throughout the year won't need to kind of list out every specific. It'll just kind of be a slightly different requirement that won't be as big as the annual reports, and that'll all be kind of detailed out in the performance agreement. And I'm just going to check if there's more details that I can provide as well. So there'll be kind of records of inspections that required as well. So I think it's kind of section in the rules regarding record keeping and reporting will provide more detail for that.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to thank everyone in the chat for adding additional context and experiences around finding regional administrators and partners in the qualified regions. Helpful context for figuring out how to support those partnerships. I don't know that we have any other questions at this time. I'm scanning through to make sure I'm not missing anything. And if there's any follow-up questions or clarification on earlier answers provided, please feel free to put those in the chat as well. We've got some additional time still to answer questions and provide information. Oh, I do have a question on when the next FAQ will come out with more insight.
Sure. We'll be looking to kind of follow up this questions, any kind of confirmed confirmation that we said we'd kind of follow up with in the next week or two. There is current FAQ on the website now that we followed up with from the last the webinar we did, and we'll look to kind of provide an update with questions on this one. And so I expect in the next week or two. And then we'll be looking as the opportunity announcement continues, we're looking to kind of update that pretty regularly as well, going through until the questions, the final questions. I can pull that up on my. So questions and answers posted will be the end of the month. So we look to kind of publish any updated FAQs fairly regularly up until then.
Great, thanks. And I wanted to note for everybody that Kayla added the link to the current FAQs available in the chat. Thanks, Carrie, for additional comment on the partner coordination. We have talked about that. There's a question about the boundary definition.
Sure.
Yeah, I think those align with the economic districts or whatever, right?
Yes. So that was established in the legislation and aligns around the economic development districts in the state.
Thank you. Um, so right, Carrie's asking for a recap on regional coordination, plans around that, and opportunities, tools, support.
Sure, I can just recap what we covered earlier, that this is kind of a competitive process, and we'll have to follow our procurement processes, but we've definitely heard like an interest in people wanting to kind of have that process of finding a partner facilitated, and we're kind of exploring what options are available to us. But if people have suggestions, I appreciate. There's been a couple I think have been dropped in the chat already. If people have suggestions, feel free to drop them in the chat or to emails, and we can continue to explore and see what we can offer.
Thanks, James.
So just kind of wanted to loop back to the question about utilities proposing alternative boundaries, and in the pause between questions, I was able to just kind of skim through and double check that there isn't any kind of restriction on that. So utilities would be able to kind of propose those alternative boundaries. But again, if they are proposing boundaries that are outside the service area, they would need to partner for that area of the region. And again, any alternative boundaries would need to kind of meet those requirements for alternative boundaries, because one of the aims is of the program is to kind of maximize the coverage across the state.
I wanted to thank Catherine added an idea in the chat. We welcome those. Thanks for adding that. Okay, new question from Greg. Is it possible for an entity to cover more than one region if we can get a larger entity to be an administrator?
So that would kind of fall under that kind of alternative boundary proposal. If you can only apply for the region that kind of one of the criteria is you can only apply for the region that has the most people you serve in. And so if you're applying for two, then you need to kind of propose an alternative boundary that would kind of cover that, and any alternative boundary would need to kind of make sure it was compliant with the requirements around the alternative boundaries.
follow-up to that, could the alternative boundary be justified through partnerships?
So again, yeah, you're welcome to partner with other eligible entities in the provision of financial assistance. And so if you're proposing an alternative boundary and there's sections of that alternative boundary that are outside your service area necessarily, but you could partner with another organization that covers that area to provide coverage for the full area of the alternative boundary.
In case anyone else has to drop, just want to let you know that we will be here till 11 to answer any additional questions. Appreciate all the ideas around partnerships and boundary determination. If you have additional ideas, please do send those to us offline as well. Okay. Okay. So this is a question about the division of grant funds awarded. Can partners divide those funds? For example, a city partnered with an entity that wanted to reserve a percentage of the funds for an existing low-income homeowner program.
Okay. So the performance agreement that is with that will establish the grant to the applicant will be between Odo and the applicant, and but there will be a requirement that any partners have a contract with the applicant themselves. So Odo won't have a contract with partners, but will require a contract between applicant and partner, and may review that just to make sure that it complies with the rules of the program. And so kind of how you establish that program will be up to the region, and we'll be looking to kind of part of that will be kind of how you prioritize funding to those priority groups, and you're able to kind of list that out in how you propose to do that in the application. And so I think you can kind of propose your kind of plan and budget in the application. I think it kind of comes down to the agreement between the applicant and the partner.
David asked a question about the, I think this is from Rule, that other costs, he's citing subsection 3B that says other costs the department determines should be ineligible, and asking for more clarity before applications are due.
Yeah, sure. So the eligible costs are those that are going to be necessary to administer and market the program. And so we provided a general outline of like those direct costs to establish, implement, monitor the program, which could include staffing, materials, supplies, travel, as well as leaving it open there for other costs that Department determined should be eligible because they're necessary to administer or market the program. And we outline those ineligible costs, just kind of like the existing indirect costs. And that line kind of flagged is kind of those other ineligible costs. So I think if the determination is whether those costs are necessary to administer or market the program, and if they are, then that would be generally typically be considered like necessary, but that's kind of that would be the kind of determining factor is whether they're necessary to administer or market the program. And if there's specific examples that you would like to clarify, we'd be happy to kind of answer that in a FAQ kind of form. So feel free to submit questions and we can kind of look at that if you have concerns about a specific type of cost. But kind of that's the kind of criteria in terms of what we're considering eligible is those that are necessary to administer and market the program. I hope that kind of at least clarifies the reasoning behind it. And so yeah, if you have examples, feel free to drop us an email and we can try and clarify that further for you.
Thanks, James. And before we run out of time, I wanted to add that over the next few weeks, please look out for additional information sharing and guidance on this program, which might include an additional webinar to provide context and answer questions that come up from the application. We are at 11 now. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today. Again, follow up with us at the email that Kayla shared with questions, thoughts, ideas. Really appreciate everyone's time.